What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Week 32 MLS Power Ranking Show on Twitter Spaces and YouTube. I'm Andrew Wiebe with Matt Doyle. As always, we're doing this thing live on Twitter Spaces on my Twitter handle, Andrew_Wiebe. I still can't say handle, but that's okay. We'll keep it going here, and it's on demand on YouTube from 10 to 1, breaking down the power rankings every single week in Major League Soccer. You can get those at MLSsoccer.com and the MLS app. We are starting at number 10, as always, with the Portland Timbers. Chris Reifer is here, down 3 spots. Chris, you expressed surprise to me that this Timbers team is still in the top 10 because that is 3 straight L's, man. I think the last time we were talking to you, it was all about how the Timbers had found their form. Well, what happened to that form?
You're not kidding. To be honest, I do feel like the kid who got invited to the birthday party, not because he's knows or is friends with the celebratee, but rather because like the parents are friends or something like that. Coming in this morning.
False, man. It's because you gave me whiskey that one time.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Or like Doyle's cats like me or something. The form has evaporated. I think a bit of a terrible week for the Timbers. I don't think there are a lot of positives to draw from it. If there is one, it's that the remaining 3 games are frankly pillow soft. And so there is still every opportunity for the Timbers even to capture the 4th seed that they probably would have captured even if they hadn't had a disaster this past week. But yeah, it's completely evaporated. I think you can point to some injuries. I think you can point to some frankly troubling mistakes and just a troubling lack of tactical awareness at times, and something that you shouldn't see at this time of year. Whatever it is, the team that was undefeated in 8 with 7 wins out of those 8 is now the Greg Berhalter of L's with 3 in a row.
Chris, tell me about the tactical shortcomings that you're seeing, because I mean, you watch these games every week, you go through it with a fine-tooth comb, and like on talent, I don't think anybody would argue that Portland belongs in the top 10, but it's not just about talent, right? It's about bringing it to bear in like a sort of concerted and cohesive way, and we're not seeing that right now. So what are these tactical errors that you're seeing?
The one that I think probably is causing some sleepless nights for GS Alvarez. I think you can go back and look at the first goal that they gave up to Vancouver. That's the 61st minute of that game, and they're up 2-0. And Diver Caicedo, I think it was, I'm pretty sure it was, unlocks them on a 60-yard dribble, basically straight up the gut. And you look at where the Timbers are in that moment where they give up the ball before Caicedo takes possession, and they're just totally stretched. They've got their fullbacks bombed on, their D-mids are pushed on, and they've basically opened themselves up in a game in which they're up 2-0, a must-win game in the 61st minute. I'm sorry, that's unacceptable at this time of year. That's something that you can't be doing. You have to have much, much more tactical awareness than that. You just think about, given the way game states absolutely sort of just dominate the playoffs, if you're in that game state and you're giving up that goal, how far are you going to go? I mean, are the Sounders giving up that goal right now? Are the Revs giving up that goal right now? When you look at the teams that are set up to do well late in the season and the postseason, they're not conceding that goal. And the Timbers are, and then the wheels fell off in that game from there. And really what was by far the most devastating of the 3-pack of losses they've had in the last week.
So 46 points right now, Chris. 4th, still in a home game based on tiebreakers in the Western Conference. But the Galaxy are right there at 5th on 46, Minnesota 45, Vancouver 44. You mentioned they just had that devastating loss. And then even Salt Lake has a game in hand and could make a run here. You mentioned the schedule. They have RSL head-to-head. I think it's San Jose, and then I'm blanking on the other one, but it's not exactly Murderer's Row. It's San Jose, RSL, and then we have Austin FC to end the year on decision day. What is the best case scenario for these next 3 games? Not in a results sense for the Timbers, because we all understand that, but in sort of a performance sense and a building sense into the playoffs. What do you want to see to have confidence come the postseason?
Basically, I want to see the team that we thought the Timbers were 2 weeks ago. I thought that was a team that was starting to get some of these wrinkles figured out and ironed out. We talked a lot early in the season about the kind of stuff that we just talked about with that Vancouver goal. But we weren't talking about that over the course of that run. And so I think that's that's what they need to get back to. They need to get back to being to being more balanced in the way they're possessing and in the way they're attacking, so that they're not opening themselves up. Because the Timbers just aren't a defensive team that puts out fires that well, and so they have to manage the circumstances in which the fires can crop up. And when they're doing that, and when they have the Sebastian Blancos playing well, Felipe Mora, if he can get back on a little bit of his heater. I think that's what the Timbers need to see over the course of the next couple of weeks. And look, the realistic possibilities for these next 3 games very much include running the table. I know the table just ran them the last week, but when you're looking at San Jose at home, an RSL away game in which the Timbers will be on a full week of rest, but RSL won't be, and then Austin at home, those are 3 winnable games. And if you're a team that has ambitions of doing something in the playoffs, you will expect to win those 3 games. And if they do, the Timbers will be 4th.
There you go. Portland Timbers at 10, down 3 spots. Chris Reifer, thank you for your time, man. We always appreciate chatting.
Hey, thanks for letting me have a slice of cake this morning, guys.
Cake. Gotta love cake. Just no bell peppers if we're going into the food takes. On to number 9. Minnesota United up 5 spots, Doyle. That is a huge rise. And I'm not entirely sure that it corresponds with some of the performances. It's been pretty good, but I don't know that it's been great. You have a win against Austin. You have a win at home against the Young Union, a rotated squad, and you have a draw at home against LAFC. Does +5 jive with where you have this team right now?
No, I mean, it's tough. +5 is way more than I thought we would see. I mean, I thought they were just going to hold steady at where they were, but it speaks to like the big blob in the Shield race. And in like the playoff race, because I guess there is no more Shield race, but like everybody from like the 5th spot in the league, which is the Union on 49 points, down to 15th, which is Montreal on 43 points. There just doesn't seem to be a lot separating these teams. So it could just be like, maybe 2 or 3 voters felt like, okay, they have Reynoso and
this
Lode.
is the Reynoso bump, right?
Yeah, Reynoso and Lode and Uno.
Yeah, Fragapane and
yeah.
I guess Hunu. I guess, though, I mean, I saw the number on the MLS Players Union release, and that is a pretty significant outlay
Well-paid
for
man.
what they're getting.
Yeah, well, so yes, but the underlying numbers for him are very good. And I trust the underlying numbers. A guy with his profile who's finding chances is eventually going to finish chances, especially when you have a guy like Reynoso and to a lesser extent Fragapane setting him up. And then the other thing is like Michael Boxall continues to be superb. Like he continues to be like maybe the most underrated center back in the league. And if you watch this game, it was like Minnesota had 70% possession. They outshot LAFC 20-1, or 20-6 rather, by a 3-1 margin.
And poor Tyler Miller right now on YouTube, we're showing you that howler. I mean, that's the difference, right?
That's the difference. And like
it's a goalkeeper Meg on a free kick that he tracks the entire way.
Exactly. And so I kind of get it. And I'm still in the camp where it's like obviously this has not been the year that I think a lot of folks, myself included, thought Minnesota were going to have, but they have so much top end talent. And once they get the couple weeks off between the end of the season and the playoffs, and they're able to get everybody healthy and they don't have to worry about international call ups, and hopefully, they're able to get their legs under them, they are set up to be a really good playoff team. And so I think maybe that is what this ranking reflects, in spite of a disappointing and kind of inexcusable result, because the performance was good. The performance was actually very good against LAFC. The result just stunk.
Now, look, I think this game was interesting. In part, Ozzy Alonso had a really good game, and that's big. And I'll get to that in a second. And also, I'm always down for a little mano a mano between Ozzy and Bob Bradley at the end of it. But I think you're right about that playoff side of things. And it's sort of, no hot boy, but instead of just hot boy and Reynoso and some other complementary pieces, it sort of feels like, and Adrian Heath keeps saying it, that with that foursome up front, and if Ozzy gets rested and back to sort of the Ozzy levels that we've seen at times, certainly not consistent, but in spurts, this team could beat a lot of people.
Yeah.
No, I think they want to play at home. Everybody does. So the results over the last part of the season will matter. But when you have 4 players on the attacking side of that ability, and I can hear just the echoing in my ear of Fragapane for newcomer of the year, and more importantly, you have Reynoso to unlock all those pieces. And then, as you said, Boxall and Ozzy, if Tyler Miller is not letting in terrible goals, which he has 2 in the last week or so, this is going to be a really, really tough team to take down. And we kind of had the question on the Eastern Conference, what's the team you don't want to see in the East if you're the Revs? I think Minnesota is probably that sort of like under the radar, kind of scary matchup for a lot of teams in the Western Conference. And it's just going to depend on where they get seeding. They could go up into a home game easily. They can't get into the top 3, but they could easily pass the Portland Timbers and be in a home game.
They could. At the same time, they could easily miss the playoffs. Like they are not in by any stretch, and their remaining schedule is not great. They're away to the Caps on Wednesday.
Huge
they host Sporting KC this coming weekend, and then they finish the season away to the Galaxy. So those are 2 desperate teams that they'll be playing away to, and then they're hosting the best or second best team in the conference. I still think Minnesota's going to make it. I think they're going to be dangerous as hell once they do. But it's not a done deal, and this team could end up missing the playoffs, which would, I imagine, lead to just like a massive reassessment of everything about Minnesota United, from the front office down to the players.
It's a cliche, but playoffs do essentially start now for Minnesota United because they are basically playing competition for playoff spots in their final 3 games, or the teams that they would play in the playoffs in a desperate position to try to get in and then make good on what we're saying, which is that they have the top end talent to make a run. You got to get there first. Minnesota up 5 spots to number 9. Let's keep it moving. Number 8, LA Galaxy. Alicia Rodriguez, Soccer Musings. You know her very well from Everything California on SB Nation. Now coming to you from North Carolina. Alicia, what's up?
Hey guys, can you hear me okay? I'm in a new state.
We got you. Twitter Spaces works on the East Coast. We now have that confirmed on the Eastern Seaboard.
Congrats on the move, Alicia. What are we seeing these days out of the Galaxy?
Yeah, I think the Galaxy are in a place where we kind of expected they would be. I think they've shown a lot of improvement over the course of the season. They had a long slump, and I think that was they were kind of due for one. They started the season really hot, and I think they hit a wall. But the last couple of weeks, they've rebounded a bit, and I don't think they're going to dominate anyone at this point, on a consistent basis. But they have some really interesting parts. I think they have a lot of things to still work on, and it's kind of a matter of, are they going to be able to figure it out, or is it going to be situation where they take some lumps?
Missing a little bit of your audio here, Alicia. I don't know if the Wi-Fi is wonky on your part. Maybe that's our issue as well. Galaxy, of course, 2-2 draw with Dallas. Comeback draw against Dallas. Up 4 spots in this. They're on sort of the brink of a home playoff game. Got to handle some business the rest of the way. But as Doyle said about both the East and the West, it is just absolutely packed up. They're away midweek against Sporting Kansas City. That's a very big game in the Western Conference. Then they're away to the Sounders. That's a very difficult twosome for LA Galaxy. Then they're home against Minnesota United. This is not going to be easy. We just basically said, hey, it's playoffs from here on out for Minnesota. It sort of feels like the way it is for LA as well, Alicia. Greg Vanney has to be happy to be in this position, but it's kind of put up or shut up time now.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they have a little bit of a cushion, obviously, because they're above the playoff line, but it's not much of one. And, like you said, I think the playoffs are starting basically tomorrow for the Galaxy, and they don't have an easy run in. So if they're able to come out of this 3-game stretch with some good results, then that should get them in the playoffs for sure. And that may give them a little bit of momentum for a first round playoff game. So, it's going to be a real acid test, I think, for them over the coming 10 days.
What did you see against Dallas? Because being down 2-0 to, I don't want to pile on Dallas, but their results speak for themselves.
I think Weeby, you muted yourself, buddy.
I did mute myself. Yes. User error. What did you think of this result against Dallas, Alicia? What's more important to you, the comeback or the fact that they're down 2-0 to one of the, I'm not going to try to pile on Dallas here, but one of the worst teams in the Western Conference and thereby the league?
Yeah, I mean, I think ending the game with a draw is better than, being pegged back and drawing that way. But I think this game was kind of a microcosm of their season. The defense really is pretty rickety still, and they still have a lot to work on, I think. And we saw that with the goals that they allowed. But I think the fight back, the fact that they didn't give up, I think that's obviously a big boost for them. That's something that they didn't really do in the Schelotto era. And then beyond that, Chicharito scored. They got a late equalizer from Leggett on a really good cross from Grancier, who I think is turning out to be a pretty decent player for LA. So it's kind of a little bit of good and bad, which is what you usually get from a draw. But I think on the whole, they can feel a little bit better in getting a draw in the way that it happened. But certainly they would have liked to have gotten the victory against a team that's struggling. But Dallas has played them pretty closely this year. I think each team has had a blowout win. So the Galaxy had one, big win and one big loss against Dallas. So, I think maybe that's just how these teams play this year against each other.
Alicia, let me ask you this. What is going to end up being the Galaxy? Because we're 31 games in and we still don't know the answer to this question. What is going to end up being the Galaxy's best formation? And part of that is what is going to end up being the Galaxy's best center back pairing. It's crazy that, we've gotten to this point. They're on the verge of making the playoffs, though, with the schedule remaining. That is not a given. Just like Minnesota United, they could very easily miss out. I feel like I still don't know the answer to these questions.
I know. I was going to ask the same question.
It's crazy to me that we've gotten here and it's still very much up in the air. And I feel like the fact that we don't know is maybe the cause of the inconsistency that we're seeing in both performances and results.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I agree. I think you have often said, I've said as well, that one of the benefits of Greg Vanney in general is that he's somebody who's flexible. He's able to make adjustments. He doesn't, sort of stick with a dogmatic formation or anything like that. But I think, to an extent, I think it's been useful this season. There's been times when he's made adjustments and times when he's been missing a lot of key players and he's just had to kind of plug and play. And, I think it's paid off at times, but I also think that I don't really know who the top pairing is for the center backs. I mean, I don't think there's anyone who you would necessarily say, based on performance this season, this guy is a lockdown starter. He's obviously the key to everything. I think they're still trying to figure that out. And I think that's kind of concerning considering they almost completely overturned the center back core this season. So to me, it's not a satisfying answer, but I think it's going to be something they're still going to be working on through the end of this season, however long that is, and heading into next year.
Kind of feels like this isn't an MLS Cup competing year, but maybe preparing for that for the LA Galaxy. But we shall see. They got to make the playoffs. They got a really, really difficult final 3 games, and they're right on that bubble in the Western Conference, as are a lot of teams. Sporting Kansas City on Wednesday night, a big Wednesday in MLS, by the way. If you are in LA or just want to watch a big game, there's one tonight as well, LAFC in action on national TV. So check that one out. And then it's Seattle, then it's Minnesota for the Galaxy. We'll see what they're made of. Up 4 spots to 8. Alicia, always great to chat. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
All right, on to number 7 we go. Orlando City. Unmute yourself, Miguel.
Hey, guys. How are you doing?
Watch out for Adam Buxa, man. Watch out. The first part of these highlights on YouTube are going to be real positive for those in purple. The second half, less positive. What'd you make of this comeback draw for the Revs?
I'm over here trying to prepare the game versus the Columbus Crew while still trying to recover from the heartbreak of that game versus New England Revolution. Look, when we saw the lineup from Bruce Arena heading into the match, we saw a big, fat, juicy steak in front of us. But we also knew, and I remember watching that game versus the Chicago Fire, if my memory serves me right, where he did a little bit of rotation, and then in the second half, he plugged Carles Gil and Gustavo Bo, and they just took care of business. So I knew that was probably going to be the plan going into this match. I knew that he was going to play them. I knew there would be some rotations as well, because obviously I just played a couple of matches nights before. They clinched the Supporters Shield, and they probably wanted to go home to celebrate getting the Supporters Shield for the first time in club history. So I felt like there would be some rotation. 9 players, though. I thought that it was like, wow, that's very brave and a little bit disrespectful. So as a player, you're probably thinking, okay, let's take care of business. But I knew they had the first half to take care of business. and obviously they went up 1-0. I felt that they were comfortable, but you started to see, we were up in the booth and we started to see Carles Gil, Buxa, Gustavo Bo warming up, and you know what that meant, and you know what those players can do. So we felt as though in the second half, obviously was going to be a bigger challenge, and DK getting the goal and a penalty kick off of Nani drawing the penalty was a massive boost. And then you guys know the story. In came these guys, and Oscar Pareja made some substitutions to try to counteract that. He tried to put Benji Michel on the left side to try to deal with Tajon Buchanan's dynamism, and then on the right side, Benji Michel to try to deal with the Juan Jones getting involved. Obviously, the Juan Jones delivered a beautiful ball for the second goal. And then obviously the guys in the middle of the field to try to deal with Carles Gil and Gustavo Bo. But those guys are on fire right now. And Orlando City had a lot of tired legs. Pereira had to come off. Nani, I think there was a little something going on. And, it was very difficult to contain him. And Buxa has evolved into such a fox in the box, as some people like to say. His movement is incredible, and he just dunks on people. And so the result was, I think we were 5 minutes away from potentially dropping 3 points.
Yeah. So that is the sort of glass half empty look from you, but I'm going to go with the glass half full, right? It's 5 unbeaten for this team. After that 4-game losing streak, they're now 5 unbeaten. And also, I think the bigger story is that Nani played his best game in months. This is the best he's looked since July. And I know you said he came off with what looked like a little bit of a knock or maybe a muscle strain. But this is the version of Nani Orlando City needs to have out there if they're going to make a push in the playoffs. What did you see from him? And do you think that this is the version that Orlando City is going to get down the stretch and into the postseason?
And there are a lot of positive things, like you say, 5 undefeated and the last 5 matches, and against good opposition as well. And Nani, obviously he got a goal in this one, and he earned the penalty kick. I think he was all over the field in the good sense, because that's what he can do. He can just kind of roam around and find the game, and he's got a lot of facets to his quality when he's in a good spot. And at that versus Nashville SC, when Orlando City was able to rescue two goals, he came in as a sub there, and I thought he was very, very good then. So I started to see sort of a comeback from Nani. Like you say, he hadn't scored since August, I think, but to see I don't want to say the best version yet, but a much better version of Nani in this last game was obviously so important. And of course, getting DK another goal, and just that personality that he's shown to take over the penalty. You guys have known that Orlando City has struggled in that department, but for him to just have that personality, is now you have another player in the likes of DK, who's hot. Junior Russo's playing great. Sebas Mendes, obviously coming back into a lineup. I thought he was very important in the first half. But obviously, Luis Nani getting to that level, playing at that level, and I think he's still playing with a chip on his shoulder after last season against New England Revolution. I think that gives Orlando City a lot of confidence going into I would say desperate, correct me if I'm describing it wrong, desperate and anxious Columbus Crew to get 3 points.
Yeah, desperate and anxious is dead on.
Hey, look, we had a question for us on Extra Time yesterday that we didn't get to, and I didn't feel like I had the toolbox to get to it. So I want to ask you, and I want sort of the quick answer, because we are trying to get through here. We had a guy on Twitter ask us whether or not this was a win now or nothing season for Orlando, and whether Nani, DK, or Pereira would be back next year. How many of those guys do you think are back? What sort of window is this championship-wise for Orlando?
Yeah, no, that's a very good question, and I think the front office is trying to navigate those options, talking to the scouting department, and without obviously spilling more than I have to or I get fired. They are exploring different options, and I'm not just talking about player, I'm talking about approach, right? How much does this fan base is going to be patient to try to build for the future? How much do they want to win today? How much time do they have? The new ownership group coming in, owners of Minnesota Vikings, they've made it very clear that they want a championship caliber team, and they're willing to do what it takes to do that. So I think all those things, regardless of how Orlando City finishes this year, those are all questions that are still up in the air, because they're trying to still read the room. This is all very new for them. I think I was reading, 19th in terms of the salary is Orlando City. So if they're able to achieve, obviously get into the playoffs, get into a top four, potentially they have that opportunity. Obviously the standard and the bar is going to be really high, because probably supporters are going to be like, okay, well, if we were able to achieve this with this sort of salary cap or this sort of investment, what are they going to expect when you have the Will family coming in with real energy to try to pour some resources into this club? That's the answer that they're trying to find. I know it's not probably as clear as it is, but there's obviously this new ownership group is new, and so they're trying to navigate to see what the best strategy is.
That's a good point, Miguel. The new ownership group's going to have their own ideas about how to do this. So away to the Crew on Wednesday, then they're home against Nashville and away to Montreal to end the season. Miguel Gallardo, you can check him out on those broadcasts for Orlando City. Yep. We appreciate it as always,
Miguel. Good luck.
All right, on to 6 we go. Ben Wright of Speedway Soccer joining us here. Nashville down 2 spots to 6. Probably should have that little dash next to their name. Stay in the same place. It's like the equivalent of a draw in the power rankings. What's up, Ben?
Hey, guys. How's it going?
1-0 loss in Philly. A rough handball to Taylor Washington. I don't think there's anything particularly deliberate about this, but he does make himself bigger, and that's the difference. And for Nashville, generally the difference has been that in the final third, they haven't been cutting without Hani Mukhtar, and he was out for this game. What's going on in Nashville world?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of it. The goals have just dried up in the last 5-6 games. I think a lot of that they've been either rotating players or missing players. Leal was out for a while, international duty, and then he wasn't fully fit when he came back. And then you've seen Sapong and Mukhtar kind of rotated out for various reasons. I think there's definitely some questions here heading down the stretch and into the playoffs.
At the same time, this is kind of what we expected from Nashville a little bit, right? Because they started the season hot. First half of the season was great, but I think first half of the season, they had 12 of their 17 home games. Second half of the season, with the just, road trip after road trip after road trip, we kind of knew there was going to be a lull. Like, we knew this was not a 65-point team. This was a 55-point team, and, kind of batten down the hatches and going to have to ride out some dry patches in terms of the attack, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and I think they probably handled the first bit of that road stretch a lot better than probably most people expected. But I think you're kind of seeing it start to wear on them here towards the end. If you want to look at it positively, I mean, I think you kind of saw their floor against Philadelphia. I mean, even missing some key players, they still came out of there with a 1-0 loss. That, like you said, kind of came off of a not fluke penalty kick, but a penalty kick that's probably not going to be repeated too often. So I think their floor is staying in games, keeping things tight defensively. And then hopefully for them, when Mukhtar's back, when Sapong's back together with him, I think you'll see a little bit more production going forward.
So going forward then, is the answer going to be the 3-5-2 with Mukhtar as a second forward underneath CJ, and then Randall Leal as kind of a number?
I think
10?
so. I mean, that's what's worked for them all season, and at this point, there's really no reason to switch from that. It's a little bit concerning how little of a factor Ake Loba is. I think ideally you want your DP, 7 million DP striker to at least be competing for those minutes, and if Sapong or Mukhtar or Leal or whoever isn't able to score goals, he should be the first option to come in and fix that. And he's really been kind of a non-factor so far. And now Daniel Rios, who I think you could probably make a good case for being the number 2 striker on the depth chart, he's out against Cincinnati with an injury. So it's just kind of looking like if Sapong or Mukhtar or Leal is not the one scoring, then you're kind of looking around wondering who's going to score.
How do you think this season ends for Nashville? It's 2 away games, winnable games, but Cincinnati got to win that. Away at Orlando, tough one, basically head-to-head competition for that home playoff spot, and then home against the Red Bulls. What's your prediction on where Nashville ends up in the seeding?
I think they're going to finish with 7 points from these next 3.
Oh,
yeah. The New York game is essentially going to be a must-win game at home. And just based on everything we've seen from Nashville this season, I expect them to win. And I think you kind of have to win against Cincinnati on the road. I mean, they'll say that going on the road is always tough, but I mean, let's be real. This is the third place team in the East versus.
Well, to be fair, Cincinnati has one win at that stadium all season.
Right.
With that, I mean, I don't care where you're playing. It's the team in third in the East against the arguably the worst team in MLS history. If you can't get 3 points there when you desperately need them, I think it's going to raise even more questions for Nashville. If you get a win there, and if you can go on the road in Orlando and get get a draw and take 4 points from this next week, I think fans are going to be feeling a lot better, and I think the outlook will be a lot more positive heading into the postseason.
Ben shows a little bit of violence against FC Cincinnati right
I mean,
there.
look, Inter Miami have more wins at TQL than Cincy do. It's not violence. It's just straight facts, just dropping facts. Nashville dropping 2 spots to 6. Ben, we appreciate your time, man. Go check out Speedway Soccer. But, if you see NYCFC at number 5 in those power rankings, feel free to question it. No, I'm just kidding, man. I'm just kidding.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Let's keep it going. Number 5 in these Week 32 power rankings, Philadelphia Union. No movement, which is interesting, Doyle, after they beat the team ahead of them in the standings in the Eastern Conference and jumped into second.
Yeah, it is a little bit weird, right? Since that loss to Club America in the second leg of the CCL semifinal, they are 5-1-2, and their only loss was away to Minnesota United, which I guess is kind of weighing on the minds of some voters. And of course
they rotated in that game in large.
Yeah, they played the children in that game, and of course the week before that, or like Saturday the 16th, they had that game up in Montreal where they played like all the kids, and they had that 2-1 lead late, and they gave that up. So maybe there's a little bit of doubt in the minds of some of the voters. I think it's kind of misplaced, man. I think what Philly's done during a season in which they made a deep and super credible CCL run. This team is dangerous. This team is really good and really dangerous. They've proved to be a little bit deeper than I think people realized. They have one of the best center back pairings in the league in Jack Elliott and Jakub Lesnes. I get, the question is still like, can Kasper Shabilko and Sergio Santos, who has been injured for the past couple of weeks, can they be the type of forward pairing that gets you a title? And I still have my questions about that. I think it's interesting that in this game, Jim Curtin seems to have some questions about that in the forwards in general, and maybe even a 2-forward formation in general, because Philadelphia played in the old AC Milan Christmas tree. They played the 4-3-2-1 in this one, and I thought they actually looked very good and like kind of natural in that formation. So there are some questions, but 5th feels a little bit low. Feels a little bit low to me right here.
It does, and we're gonna keep giving you these schedules for the rest of the year, because at this point, 3 games left. It's what it all comes down to. Wednesday, away at Toronto. That's no guarantee.
No.
As Montreal saw. And then you're home against Cincy. So they have one of the most, on paper, softest schedules in the East to go in, and then away at New York City to end. Again, that might have felt a little easier maybe 4 days ago. It's not as easy now when you go to Yankee Stadium seeing what they did to DC. So 3 big games for Philly on the way in. If they can win these next 2, they will be in a really good spot to, outside the Revs, perhaps have that home field advantage all the way to MLS Cup if they can get there and the Revs fall short. All right, let's keep going. Number 4 in these power rankings, Colorado Rapids, up 2 spots after beating the Portland Timbers. Doyle, I feel like we give the Rapids a ton of credit.
Yeah.
And I think we just have to keep pounding that, because I'm not sure that in a sort of national sense in Major League Soccer terms that they are getting enough of that credit. They are doing this with essentially without a DP, because they haven't Udis Nomley has not been around for almost the entire season. This is incredible what they've done. And I think back to the, the Anthony Hudson era and the CCL jokes and how it was still preseason and all just the misery that was piled upon them, and Connor Casey, and then the switch to Robin Fraser, and the way that they've built this roster without doing what a lot of other teams who are at the top of these power rankings have done. And I keep going back to sort of the uniqueness of the project, and the incredible success that they've had with it. I mean, it is really special, and Rapids fans should really cherish this.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And I mean, if you're watching it on YouTube, you're seeing some of the fruits of the Rapids way of getting players in, because it's Brian Galvan, who is a notable signing, but certainly not as notable as some of the other South Americans who have been brought into the league over the past couple of years. And he cost a fraction of what a lot of those guys cost. Crossing to Don Baji, who, understandably has bounced around the past couple of years, but now that he's back in Colorado for basically nothing, they got him for basically nothing. He has 3 goals in 225 minutes. And so the ability to get guys who are kind of under the radar in, and to get them into positions to succeed and exploit a team that is on paper a much more talented side in Portland, that has been Colorado's calling card. The thing is, Weeby, and you kind of touched on it in speaking so glowingly about them at the top of this segment, which is justified, to be clear. You said they haven't done the same stuff that a lot of the other top teams have done. And to that, you mean spend $9 million on an Alan Pulido, or
well, I don't even mean the spend, though. The spend can be important. It's not, you don't know that $9 million is going to pay off. It's just simply the game changing attacking player, like that you can trust. And I'm not saying 100% of the time, but you can trust 80% of the time to make plays that other people either don't or don't consistently. And the teams above them have those players.
Yeah,
they do.
And that's why, like, I will, without diminishing at all how excellent this Colorado team has been throughout this regular season, I have a hard time imagining them going deep in the playoffs, because I think you need that guy. You need a Rui Diaz. You need a Pulido. You need, we saw what a healthy Josie Altidore did for years in the Eastern Conference, or what Joseph Martinez does in the playoffs whenever he's healthy for, Atlanta United. It is tough. It is historically very, very tough to make a run when that's the shape of your roster.
Who is closest to you? Who is the closest approximation, if any, on this team to a player that could be that sort of guy?
I mean, I still think Mark Anthony Kaye has unexplored upside as a midfield playmaker, who can give guys tap-ins. But yeah, just in terms of pure attackers, there's nobody. Everything with Colorado has to come from them being on the same page and being more locked in,
or set pieces,
and being more locked.
That is their DP.
Well, yeah, but we saw what happens when they go up against actual DPs last year in the playoffs, right? So, and that's the thing. Everything that the Rapids do has to come from them being more locked in than their opponents, which is easier to do in the regular season than in the playoffs when everybody's locked in. And if you run into a Reynoso and a Lod and a Kevin Molino when they're really focused, and when they're playing like, okay, we got a chance to take a step closer to a championship, that's like you're down 3-0 at halftime, So I admire the hell out of what the Rapids have done, and I think Robin Fraser is one of the best coaches in the league. I still think that what we're seeing here is their ceiling. I think it's been a remarkable year, but in a lot of ways, it's like just a prettier version of what they were in 2016.
Yeah, the sad thing for the Rapids is they had a run there where they dropped a lot of points, including at home. They're only 3 points back right now of Seattle. If they would have not dropped just a couple of those, they might be the top team in the Western Conference in this conversation. Though not completely different, might be talking about home games for the Rapids instead of road games. But I have to say, in the Western Conference, the best teams are pretty equal on both sides. The Rapids have 7 wins on the road this year, 8 wins at home. So they might be one of those teams that says it's okay, we'll go on the road. Jack Price's right foot is our DP. All right, let's keep it going. Number 3, Sporting Kansas City, I believe. No, Seattle Sounders. Oh, yeah, because Kansas City won. I have not seen Steve Zakuani wander his way into these parts. He was scheduled to join us this morning. I know he had some kickboxing per normal. But Sounders, man, I don't know. How much would you take away from this game? Like, I wouldn't take that much away.
So I am going to take a bunch away because we're not sure that Nico Lodeiro is actually going to be back this year, or that when he comes back, he's going to be Nico Lodeiro. We are pretty sure that Jordan Morris is going to come back, but he's coming back off of an ACL injury. And the last time Jordan Morris came back off an ACL injury, it took him 4 or 6 months to start looking like the dynamic version of Jordan Morris again. And we don't know exactly, when or if Raul Ruidiaz is going to be back.
I think that one's the less. That's the least.
It is,
because I thought he was in Peru still. He is not. He is back with the Sounders. There's a possibility he could play. I think if I read that right, tonight they take on LAFC. Although that would probably be less likely off the bench. Certainly, I think he'll be back. Plus, they have a long break for the international break. It's Nico and Jordan. Those are the two big question marks, right?
Yeah, I think so. But we should flag that game, by the way. Tonight, Seattle are down at LAFC at 10:30 p.m. That's on ESPN and ESPN Deportes. So make sure you tune in for that one. I still think that there are question marks, even around Nico Lodeiro, though you're correct. There are fewer around him than the others. And as great as the Sounders have been this year, and as really impressive as this season has been from them, doing virtually all of it without Lodeiro, I don't think they have a shot in the playoffs. If Lodeiro, Morris, and Ruidiaz are not the guys that they are paid to be and that they have been in the past. I think they need 2 of those 3.
I think Ruidiaz would be enough.
Okay. Well, I mean that we might end up seeing that.
Yeah, and I think that's the most likely scenario, is that he's really the only one that's either ready or at a fitness level to allow him to impact games like that. But look, we talk a lot about the depth behind it, but it isn't really like super productive goal scoring depth. If you look at their season this year, it's Ruidiaz at 16 goals. Then it's Montero and Roldan at 6, Madronda, bangers only at 4, Benazet, who just got in at 3, Will Bruin at 3, João Paulo at 3, Smith at 3, Arriaga at 2. I mean, it is by committee. Leo Chu has turned into, or seems to be turning into, a potential game changer in the playoffs, likely off the bench. But if Ruidiaz is not there, there are some question marks about whether the chances created, which they created against Kansas City, they had the opportunities, will end up in the back of the net.
Yeah.
If Ruidiaz is there and he's somewhat healthy in the playoffs, I have just so many fewer doubts, because he is just a killer.
He is one of the 3 best postseason center forwards we've ever had in the league. So if he's healthy, then yeah, you're probably right, Weeby. All they really need to do to be, one of the 2 Western Conference favorites is to get him healthy. If they get Morris and Lodeiro healthy, that's kind of a bonus. But I think the point I'm making here is, if they don't, and it's not a given, if they don't have Ruidiaz, and to a lesser extent the other 2 guys, then I kind of have Seattle in the same category as Colorado. Like, just a great team, well coached, tactically disciplined, who lack match winners. And I think in the playoffs, more than the regular season, you need those match winners.
I think the difference between the 2 is that there are players that aren't Ruidiaz that have been match-winning quality for the Sounders in the playoffs, and they have a culture and an expectation and a level of experience in those moments that makes a huge, huge difference.
It hasn't passed. Yeah.
We'll see. You got to be, if you're a Sounders fan, you got to be like, maybe you got your own shrine out for the hamstrings and whatever body parts that you need to heal over the course of the next month or so as you get past decision day, through that international break, and then into the playoffs. The other nice thing for the Sounders as far as rest goes, maybe not for quote-unquote momentum, is that they could be, it's not guaranteed here, and that's why tonight is so important, they could be the number 1 overall seed. The more rest they can get seems like the better for a team of the Sounders ilk.
number 1 seed in the West not
Correct.
the number 1 overall seed.
Yeah, correct. In the West. In the West. All right, let's keep it moving. Finish the thing off. Number 2, Sporting Kansas City, Ali Trost. What's up, Ali? I just sent you the invite to speak, so jump in when you get that or send a request to me. A big 2-1 win in Seattle for Sporting Kansas City. Ali, what'd you make of this game?
I mean, well, number one, it was just so dang fun. I mean, you've heard coaches and players across the league now talking about just how fun this part of the season is. And that was the most playoff-like atmosphere, especially given last year with the reduced capacity for fans. Like, that was one of the best environments for an MLS game that I've ever been a part of. And then the game itself was just wild. So it was, I mean, just talking about the atmosphere itself, it was the perfect start to kick off, in my opinion, what will be a really exciting 2021 playoffs.
Who is more important to Sporting Kansas City to be on form? Daniel Shalhoub or Johnny Russell?
That's a great question. Well, I mean, number one, it's going to depend on what Shalhoub's health status is.
What is it?
So we'll talk with Vermees here in the next hour, but the last we heard, he's day-to-day, picked up an ankle injury in the game against Vancouver. Haven't really heard much beyond that. So honestly, I wish I had more to share, but I honestly have no idea. Is it a cop-out answer to say both? I mean, both of them have worked so well together this season, whether it's Daniel assisting Johnny, Johnny assisting Daniel, being a part of, the plays that set up some of these goals and important goals at that. I think both of them being in good form is important for Sporting Kansas City, maybe even more so than having Pulido back. I think having Pulido back will be insanely important for this team and is something that is expected as far as, what we've heard so far from Vermees and what his recovery has looked like up to this point. But Daniel Shalhoub and Johnny Russell have done enough to keep Sporting where they're at, even without Pulido for significant chunks this season. So I think having Pulido back will be that extra edge that you need in the playoffs, and that Sporting was severely lacking last year and also lacking Daniel Shalhoub. But looking at where this team is at this year, Pulido is an edge that they'll need in the postseason. But Daniel Shalhoub and Johnny Russell have been, at least in the recent weeks and couple of months, have been the key for the Sporting KC team.
Does depth worry you at all? Like, it just doesn't seem like Peter trusts that bench.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at these next 2 weeks, short rest, final 4 games of the season, you've got LA Galaxy coming to town. That's going to be a big game on Wednesday. You've also got RSL on decision day. Who knows what that's going to look like with them, kind of fighting in that, bottom of the playoff line. So I think it's going to be a really tough couple of weeks. And yeah, the rotation hasn't really been there. I don't know exactly what Peter's feelings are about his depth in the bench, but what he's shown is that, those guys haven't really gotten any minutes, and rotation, I think, is going to be a big concern, especially if Shalhoub is still out this week, if Jose Mauri is still out this week. But one big boost is getting Nicholas Isimat-Marine back. I actually don't even know if you can, I don't think you can overstate just how important it is for Sporting to have gotten him back when he did. I mean, the feeling from the technical staff is that he is, if they want to make a run in the playoffs, like, he is, arguably the most important part to that. So I think that is just as big as whenever they get Shalhoub and whenever they get Pulido back, because not only for the depth, but also just for what he provides them defensively, which they got some great games and great results with Ilie and Fontas. And I agree with you guys talking earlier about how Andreu Fontas should be front runner for Defender of the Year, just with the numbers that he's putting up this season and his consistency. But, Issy has that playoff type quality as a defender, especially if they're going to be going up against teams like Seattle again. If Seattle can get reinforcements from the guys that they've been missing, I think that's another key part. But the depth is definitely a question, because really, if you look at the bench that was up in Seattle, the only player that's gotten really any minutes this season is Cam Duke.
Yeah. And Isimat-Marine, I think, is a perfect compliment to Andreu Fontas. By the way, Ali, love the news this morning in NWSL for KC Woso. Love that news. Incredible location, the perfect location. That whole North River Market area just exploding. I cannot wait to see that thing come to life.
Oh, it's going to be so great, not just obviously for the team and soccer here in the Midwest and in Kansas City, but for the growth of downtown. Anyone who has been in Kansas City, from Kansas City, has seen firsthand just how much the downtown area has really grown in the last 5-10 years, and it's only getting bigger and bigger, and this is going to be a huge part of that growth. And so excited for the city and so excited for the NWSL. Chris and Angie Long, Brittany Matthews have been fantastic. I'll be down there for a press conference later today to, hear more from them about it. But just another great move by that ownership group, and looking forward to seeing just what it all looks like in the next few years. Really exciting stuff.
Chicharito and the Galaxy coming to Kansas City on Wednesday. FS1 Fox Deportes, 8:30 p.m. Eastern. Ali, thanks for chatting. Always good to hear from you.
Thanks, guys.
All right, we finish it off, as always, with number one. Who else? The Supporters Shield winning New England Revolution. Jeff Lemieux, jump in here, man. Tell us what this feels like. I hope you're in. I'm checking real quick. Yeah. Oh, no, Jeff, request, man. I just hit you the invite on you. Jeff, I want to say it's been more than a decade for him in New England. They got it done without playing a game, Doyle. This thing, the highlights we're watching right now, didn't even need this. Didn't need this draw. They just went out and got it for themselves. I think Jeff jumped in. Unmute yourself, Jeff, and tell us what this means.
Sorry, we were in the midst of the pregame press conference previewing tomorrow's game against the Colorado Rapids. But
oh man, we're taking you away from your job.
If I can talk to Revolution players or you guys, I'll
of course.
You talk to them all the time, man. How long's it been for you in New England? Can I ask that first?
This is my 14th season,
oh,
so
my
it's
Lord.
been a while.
Yeah, that's more than half the existence of the club.
It is, which I have been painfully aware of.
Bruce Arena has sort of gone back and forth, playing down and playing up to Supporters Shield. In your opinion, being so close to this organization, this fan base, these players, these coaches, what does this accomplishment mean?
It is, to this point, the biggest accomplishment in the history of the club. I don't think there's a whole lot of arguing that right now. Now, the hope, obviously, and the objective is to make it the second most important accomplishment in the history of the club in a couple of months. But right now, the fact that this is the first league trophy that this club has won in 26 years, you can see the outpouring of emotion from the supporters of this club this past weekend. This means a lot to a lot of people. It means a lot to the club. And I think the idea has been to maybe downplay a little bit, just because MLS Cup is still out there, right? And that's the objective. That's what everybody wants. And I think the Reds have put themselves in a position where if they don't go win MLS Cup, it's going to end up feeling a bit like a disappointment because they've been so good this year. But make no mistake about it, right now, the Supporters Shield is the biggest accomplishment in this club's 26-year history.
So, Jeff, I obviously, I'm a Supporters Shield truther, and I completely agree with everything you just said. One of the points that I have made over the years in trying to explain why the Shield is such a great trophy and why it matters so much is that it takes that game after game mindset, that commitment to bringing at least your A- game every single week, which a lot of teams struggle with in MLS, in any league. But, especially in MLS, what was it in the group that allowed them to do that so ruthlessly this year? And did you see it coming?
No, nobody saw it coming. And Bruce Arena's been asked that question. Are you surprised that this club has won 21 games this season? And Bruce was really honest, said, yeah, we didn't expect this team to have potentially the best record in Major League Soccer history. I think everybody expected, after the run through the playoffs last year, getting Carlos Heel back healthy, getting another year under Tajon Buchanan's belt, Adam Buch's belt. This team was going to be better this year. This team was going to be a contender in the Eastern Conference. But nobody was expecting this team to potentially put together the best regular season in MLS history. And it really has been remarkable how consistently this team has found ways to win. I know it's such a huge cliche, but Matt, you mentioned this team has gone out and there's been games where for 60, 65, 75 minutes, it wasn't there. And then they'll spark to life for the 15 or 20 minutes that really matter and figure out a way to get themselves over the line. And I don't know if that's a mentality thing or it's just the fact that they've got so many match winners on their team, that they've got guys who can come up with those moments that win you games. But consistently all season, on nights when you didn't think they necessarily should have come away with any points, they have done that. And they've done that more consistently than I've ever seen certainly a Revolution team do, maybe an MLS team.
Adam Buksa's development. What have you seen? I mean, David Goss always says it takes a year. Well, he might be right on this one because Buksa has been just monstrous.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was always there. I think the biggest development has been his recognition and movement inside the penalty area. It feels like he needed to learn a little bit about how to get himself into the right goal scoring positions. Maybe at the beginning of his MLS career, early last season, maybe he was relying on that height a little bit. I think he would kind of get himself into the box and say, look, I'm 6'3", I'm great in the air, get the ball in here to me, and I'll get up and win it. But I think the Revs really worked with him on making sure that his movement inside the box is getting him into the right areas. So now you're seeing not only hard near post runs, you're seeing him float off defenders' back shoulders. I mean, the little run he makes on the first goal in Orlando on Sunday night finds a great little spot for Gustavo Bo to play that ball in. But also it's a matter of him creating space for himself when cross is coming in from the wide areas, because he's, instead of jumping from static positions, he's creating a couple of yards of space for himself to get up. And if you've got Adam Buksa, who's 6'3" and can jump, getting a couple of yards head start to get in the air, and he's jumping against a static defender, he's going to win that header every single time.
And I got to tell you, just like from the outside looking in, given what he's done with the Revs, what he's done with Poland, I would be surprised if Tajon Buchanan was the only player on this Revs team making a big money transfer this offseason. Buksa has to be drawing interest from multiple teams in Europe, I imagine.
It's funny, Bruce was asked about that in a press conference a few weeks ago. I think there were some rumors out that had talked about Buksa potentially leaving this offseason. And Bruce, in very typical Bruce fashion, said, I haven't heard any of that, so if any of you guys hear about Adam Buksa leaving, please be sure to let me know. But that was Bruce's response when that was brought up a few weeks ago.
Come on, Jeff. You got a better Bruce Arena impression than that, right?
I'm not doing that.
Keep that behind closed doors. Let me ask you a question about Bruce, because I was a little bit surprised, not by the lineup against Orlando, but I was surprised that he brought on the full shift change, given that the Shield was already locked up. What did you think of that decision to sort of put out these guys that didn't necessarily have to play to get the Shield, and what that says about his approach to this final stretch? Because we do know that MLS Cup is the ultimate goal, and we do know that Bruce, in large part, has prioritized that in previous, stints and previous jobs, and rested guys or prepared his players in a different way. I was a little surprised that he brought them on in that situation.
Yeah, I think especially with the weather on Sunday night in Orlando, It was a really soggy field, so I think there was definitely a line of thought that was, okay, you've got the Shield locked up. This game, in terms of a result, doesn't really matter. Just get out of here and make sure that you're as healthy as possible. But I think Bruce Arena watched that first half and was not happy and said, we got to change things up. We can't just go through another 45 minutes like that. We got to go for it. And I actually asked him on the press conference right before I hopped on here. My question to Bruce was, with these two regular season games left, with the Shield already locked up, what are the primary objectives? What do you want the group to take from these two games? And his answer was, I think, 4 words? He said, improve and win the game. So I guess maybe five words. But that's all he said. He said, we got 2 games left, improve and win the games. And I think that's his mindset. Just if this team goes out and just keeps performing the way they're performing and keeps winning, that's going to give them the best chance to win an MLS Cup. That's just kind of where the mindset is right now.
Winning is a habit.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's kind of what makes them great. Like, that's kind of what I was thinking when we brought him on, is that what makes them great and what makes Bruce teams great is that the expectation is that you'll win. Like, and that's very Brucean to be just like, it's that simple, but like, that's kind of the deal. What is the pitfall potentially in the playoffs? We know where they're going to be in the standings. We know they're going to have home field advantage if they win all the way to MLS Cup. Where is the pitfall as you see it?
Well, I think they're definitely looking to tighten things up defensively over the course of these past couple games. There are a couple stats that, players, coaches keep kind of coming back to. It's 1 clean sheet in the last 14 games at this point. They've actually conceded multiple goals in the last 3 games, a pair of 2-2 draws and a 3-2 win. So there have been some cracks defensively, but the team has honed in on that. They know that is going to have to tighten up come playoff time, especially because the way playoff games usually play out, they're going to be a lot tighter games. And they've also actually conceded the first goal at home a few times recently. They've always found a way back into those games. But come playoff time, if you don't have to, you don't want to ride your luck. You don't want to test that. So I think making sure they're getting that first goal come playoff time and tighten things up defensively are 2 things they're really focusing on over these next few games.
All right, and Jeff Lemieux, he's been there for 14 years. He's seen more than half the history of the New England Revolution. He says this is the biggest accomplishment in club history. But there's one more. MLS Cup. That's what it's all about. Jeff, we appreciate you, man. Thanks for joining us. Here is your Power Rankings Top 10. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're listening on Twitter Spaces, we love you. We appreciate you. From 10 to 1, the Timbers, Minnesota, Galaxy, Orlando, Nashville. The big jumpers here are the Galaxy and Minnesota, up 5 and 4 spots respectively. Philadelphia, Colorado, Seattle, Sporting Kansas City, and New England round out the top 5, 2 from the East, 3 from the West. Tuesday night action, LAFC hosting the Seattle Sounders, a huge game. LAFC under the playoff line, the Sounders trying to hold on to that number 1 spot in the Western Conference. Tuesday night, tonight, 10:30 p.m. Eastern, ESPN Deportes, and a full slate on Wednesday, including on FS1, Sporting Kansas City hosting the LA Galaxy. 2 top 10 teams in these power rankings. That is it for us. Enjoy your Tuesday, everybody. The last power ranking show of the season comes next Tuesday. And then guess what? It's decision day and on to the playoffs. Have a great day, folks.